Hey friends, what's up? This is Metro, and I have to confess. I'm sorry, I've become a scumbag. I used to be known for my Wraith builds that were pretty straight up, pretty honest, and pretty fair, and I haven't really ever played Shadowweave much. I never liked the playstyle, and I was always trying to be very honest with my builds. The theme is the same, it's like kinda out-aiming the opponent, but I am sad to announce that I think on high level, this is just not doable right now on Wraith, okay? We're gonna go over my new build, the Metro Scumbag Wraith. And as always, we'll go over every single item and explain why we're running the build, or why we're running the item in the build, why it's good, when it's good. And I'm gonna try to really go in depth here, in depth. Along the way, I think we'll talk a bit about the current state of Wraith, what I think about it, and you let me know in the comments what you think, okay? Early game and mid game might seem very familiar. In fact, the entire build layout you might look at and think, oh, this is not much different from all your other Wraith builds. But yeah, it's a complete opposite. It's a complete opposite. It is really a glass cannon, one trick, one shot combo build. The strongest build in the game right now, in my opinion. More so than any other build, and I also think it is the only viable build against anything in the game, okay? And I'll explain to you why while we get along or go along with the items. Okay, so again, we start with basic magazine. We know by now we want a bigger magazine on Wraith. It's always worth it, especially early game. You can end up selling this later down the line if you want to. We usually don't do that. We usually go for Titanic magazine later. But yeah, it's just a super solid, like almost a must-pick item on Wraith. Monster rounds, back on the menu. I always like depending on the build, depending on if we have enough slots in the, or enough weapon, orange slots in the build, I go for monster rounds extra because I think it's really good in the current meta still. It's really good to push towers early, kill towers early. It's really good to push walkers, and it's amazing to farm the jungle really, really fast for really cheap. Also really good to win your lane, right? To just like push the creep wave out and then go into your jungle, farm the jungle, come back, etc. A new addition to the build is Hollow Point Ward. And this is really actually an item we're running because of Shadowweave. And this might sound really silly because Shadowweave is like way down the line. But yeah, first and foremost, does not need a lot of orange items compared to my other builds, okay? In my other builds, I'm running stuff like Fleetfoot, and we usually tend to rush like 2 other orange items pretty fast, like Swift Striker, etc. But in this build, we really have a slot to go for another early game orange item. And the reason we're running Hollow Point Ward is it's really good on lane, as long as you stay up, right? Like, but more importantly, we're not even gonna sell this. Usually, we won't even sell this until we get to Shadowweave. So what we're really getting is 22% damage for cheap, okay? And once we talk about the playstyle of this build, you will never drop below 60% health in a fight unless you fuck up majorly. But like basically, it's another, like it's 22% extra damage for free. Is the way you want to think about this item in a fight, okay? And fights, spoiler alert, in this build, fights last for like exactly 2 seconds, okay? Ammo scab is back on the menu. I said this last patch, I said this in the patch review I did. It is back to being probably the best purple spirit gain item in the lane as long as you're in a solo lane, okay? So I have an annotation here, it says replace with extra spirit if in duo lane. The reason being is you now need 20 stacks, which means 20 soul last hits to get the 20 ammo stacks, which is going to be kind of hard to do in a duo lane, right? And keep in mind, if you die, you have to refresh the entire stacks again, right? So in solo lane, this item is amazing now. What changed is it lasts for 45 seconds instead of 35. So basically, as long as you're farming actively on the map, this will never ever go down, right? The only time this will go down is if you die, okay? So as long as you don't die, if you do it correctly, you have just like more ammo, which is great, and you have a plus 20 spirit for free, which is going to increase your damage on cards in the early game. And this is an item we're probably going to end up selling later down the line, or we will most definitely sell later down the line, but this is just really easy extra damage for early game and then mid game to farm and to kill enemies with, okay? And then extra charge is a no-brainer, right? I don't think I need to talk about this item anymore. It's just a must-have on Wraith to have an extra card, right? Because you get one, like 33% more card damage. You hold more, right? You farm better. It's like literally the best 500 item in the game for Wraith. Extra stamina. Wraith has lower stamina. It helps you survive. It helps you get in and out of fights faster, right? And it helps you traverse the map faster for faster jungling, faster farming, faster rotations. And since we don't really need a lot of green slots in this build either, it's just like a no-brainer to get this. Same for extra health. You can technically skip this if you want. It's just gonna make you a bit more survivable. But yeah, it's a really solid item. Just got buffed for another 10 health, I think, so it does 160 health, and we're gonna upgrade this into Fortitude later. These two, Restorative Shot and extra regen in case we need it, okay? If you play the lane properly, you might not need either of them, okay? So this is just a way to regen. So far, again, this might seem very similar to some of my other builds, right? Like, if you look at it, nothing really changed, and that is not really true. And I'll explain to you why. We are going into Tesla Rush. As always, it is probably the #1 item for Wraith right now. Just speeds up your farming speed by an insane amount. And this item allows us to snowball into our combo, which in this case is Shadow Weave and then Slowing Hex or Silence Cliff, right? So we go for Tesla Bullets, quick serial reload to reload and farm the jungle faster. Here I usually have Fleetfoot, and I love Fleetfoot and I still think it's a great item, but in this build it is not really, well, I wouldn't say necessary. It's still great, but I couldn't fit it in. Still a good option. And then we go right into Bullet Lifesteal, or you can go Combat Barrier first. Both of these items help you farm more efficiently. Bullet Lifesteal is going to make it so you don't die while farming, right? And then obviously it's going to heal you in fights. And Combat Barrier increases your damage and your fire rate while you have that Bullet Shield up. This item is amazing for Wraith, by the way, because once you level up your 2 to at least level 2, you get bullet shields back. So even in fights, you can actually lose your barrier, use your 2, get your barrier back, and that the effect of Combat Barrier reprocs. It's an amazing item for Gun Wraith, and this is still a gun build. And I still think gun is better than cards. After we're going Bullet Shredder Resist, reduces the enemy's bullet resist, right? More damage for you. And then we're going Burst Fire. This is the big first change from my usual builds. And the reason we're running Burst Fire is quite simply, the goal of this build is to catch someone off guard and kill them in the lift before they drop down to the floor, okay? So if you compare this to some of my other builds, right? I used to run a lot of magazine increasing perks, right? Escalating resilience to increase your bullet resist, right? More spirit armor, more long-term sustain, right? Or I used to run, well, before then, I used to run a lot of defensive items, is my point, right? But this is really a really offensive option. The catch is it only lasts for 4 seconds, right? You get the bonus fire rate and the bonus movement speed once you start shooting the enemy hero, right? So this procs on enemy heroes. As soon as you start shooting them, you get the bonus fire rate. And this is gonna allow you to burst down anyone in the game as long as you get the lift off, okay? And how do we get the lift off? Slowing Hex. Slowing Hex makes it so the enemy gets away slower from you and also disables movement abilities, right? And there's so many in the game that stop you from using your ult, right? If you're a Wraith main and you play Wraith a lot, you know them, right? Tornado of Mirage, Infernus's Run, right? Dynamo's Teleport. There's, yeah, the list goes on and on. There's so many abilities that can get the enemy out of your lift. And this is especially important now because Lift just got nerfed, right? Telekinesis got nerfed. It now takes another 100 milliseconds to cast, so it takes longer to cast. And especially on high level, in practice, enemies get away way too much now, in my opinion. And even so is Slowing Hex to an extent, where you use your ult and they dash just enough, right, to get around the corner to where you can't shoot them and then they're fine, right? So that is like the main thing that really made me swap to this build, which I guess now is a great time to talk about Wraith in general and how I feel about Wraith, right? Wraith got nerfed quite hard this patch. I'm not saying she's weak. And I think with this build, she's still insanely strong. And I would say this now for all the Wraith haters that are maybe still watching. I understand your pain now, right? I understand why you hate Wraith. I understand why you hate Shadow Weave Wraith. It is really frustrating to play against, okay? I get it. I tried to play an honest Wraith playstyle until now, okay? But I am self-aware. I called this the Scumbag Wraith build. And it is the Scumbag Wraith build. But the reason I'm running this is because the upfront honest Wraith build, or the upfront honest Wraith, in my opinion, doesn't work anymore. Or doesn't work as well, at least. Especially on high level, okay? People get away too easily. And I'm not saying, you know, they should just stand still, I get a lift and they die, right? Even in sustained fights, everyone else seems to do better. Everyone else seems to do better. Like, it seems like I can't stay alive for long, even if I build mega tanky. I lose 1v1s to bebobs that are my soul level or lower, right? Like, and Wraith is supposed to be that 1v1 carry character, right? At least in my opinion. So, yeah, I tried a lot, but the reason I think Wraith feels so weak this patch is, again, as I mentioned, lift. It's harder to catch people with the lift because they have longer to get away from it, okay? That is one of the main reasons in my opinion. But more so, there was a soul change, and I made another video before this where I talked about the issues with the soul changes, right? So, TLDR, right now, you get more money staying together in lanes after 8 minutes. It's not 100%, they did reduce it to 75 in a hotfix patch, but you used to only get 50% by staying together, right? And now you get 75, and they also nerfed jungle farm. So what happens is, people tend to stay together more. And again, if you want my full thoughts on this, check out the video that I posted right before this one. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but TLDR, what happens is, there's a lot more team stacking, a lot more people play together, which means Wraith becomes weaker. Why? Because Wraith is really good at fighting 1v1, right? Which happens less. And Wraith is really good at split pushing, which happens less because there's always, or more often than not, multiple people defending a walker. That's, I think, the main reason why the honest, or the honest Wraith doesn't seem to work as well anymore. This is the item that allows Wraith right now to still perform really well. Because it allows Wraith to get in an amazing position to get a lift off, right? It allows Wraith to catch out anyone that is not with the team, right? It is the Scumbag playstyle. And once we get to this item, our playstyle is going to change drastically. Until we get to Shadow Weave, we mostly farm, right? We mostly split push, farm. Of course, we're going to join teamfights if we have to. And if we see anyone that is dumb enough to contest us 1v1 after we have burst fire, we can kill anyone. After burst fire, we already have so much damage. Especially after slowing hex, if we see an Infernus on a lane and he's alone, we can kill them, right? You're gonna change your playstyle completely. What's gonna happen is, you buy this item, you're gonna pop the item, and you're gonna look for people that are out of position. You're gonna look for people in the jungle. Ideally, you wanna look for people that are alone. The Scumbag playstyle, the Rat playstyle. But yeah, I usually, with this build, I actually tend to level up telekinesis to max first. Because, you know, mass lift is so valuable for this. But yeah, we look for anyone on the map, and we look for a kill. And it doesn't matter if it works out or not. If it works out, you get a free kill, and then you go back to farming. If it doesn't work out, you back out, right? You teleport out, or you die, and then you go back to farming, right? As soon as we have Shadow Weave and lift, telekinesis up, we look for kills. That's all we do. It's not unfailable, but once you get the playstyle down, it is really good. And it is frustrating to me, because it's not my favorite way to play Wraith, but I think it's just by far the strongest. And I like to win, you know, as I'm sure you do. Here's where, if in case, when we're at burst fire and you don't have a flex slot yet, you can very easily get rid of monster rounds, right? Then slowing hex, you probably want to get rid of ammo scavenger. Don't sell extra charge. Yeah, definitely get rid of ammo scavenger at that point. And then at the point of Shadow Weave, you should really have a flex slot, right? That's basically already late mid game, right? So at this point, you should have a flex slot. I don't think I've ever played a single game where I went to Shadow Weave and I didn't have a flex slot, okay? Which brings me to my damage point. The best way to initiate with Shadow Weave and the best way to make this build work, assuming you have the normal build order and assuming you just got Shadow Weave, is very simple, okay? At this point, you probably have at least level 2 on both lift and telekinesis. You most definitely do at this point, because if you have enough money to afford Shadow Weave, you have enough money to get a level 5 on something. It doesn't really matter for this build what you level up first in terms of how much damage you're gonna do, right? You don't really need the lifesteal, because again, by the time they're on the floor, they shouldn't be able to fight back, they should be dead. So I level up lift first, so assuming this is your build, which seems very reasonable at this point, right? You go invis, you look for someone, you come out, you pop out of invis by slowing hexing them, immediately lifting them, then you press full auto, and then you only shoot. You only shoot. You can throw a card very early, instantly, to get even more fire rate bonus with Quicksilver reload, right? Because it gives you the fire rate bonus. But keep in mind, after you will have to reload because you proc Quicksilver reload early, okay? So depending on this is like an experience over time thing. If you think you need the damage, the extra fire rate damage, you can pop one card early. Otherwise, it is unironically with this build, which is like a 50-50 thing, right? It's a bit more gun damage, obviously, than purple, but we have like some investment in purple items. But it is always better to only shoot while they're lifted, funnily enough. One card maximum. You will lose damage, or DPS, you will lose damage per second if you throw cards. You can start throwing cards when they're on the floor, and obviously there's examples where you want to throw cards, right? If there's multiple targets in front of you, you want to throw cards for the splash damage, and if they're using metal skin, right, you can't even do damage with guns, and then you definitely want to throw cards. But my point is, if you can avoid it, yeah, you go invis, you find someone, slowing hex, ult, lift, full auto, shoot, and then at the point where they drop down is where you throw the card and you have the reload. And yeah, at that point, anyone that is anywhere close to you in souls is dead, okay? Unless they have a way out, and the only two ways out at this point for most characters is metal skin or ethereal shift. And a lot of time people don't even use them in time, right? If you catch them off guard. So again, I'll explain this one more time. Very simple, right? You start off, you come out of invis. By the way, pro tip, you can see the detection range on yourself, okay? So as long as you're like completely opaque or transparent, no, the enemy can't see you. But as soon as you become like kinda, you will see, if I get close enough, that you will, yeah, you see there's like where I start popping up. I'm still invis, but the enemy can see my shadow, basically, at this point, right? So at this point, you need to be aware that the enemy could see you. So if you walk to them straight, like frontal, they might see you. It's still kind of hard to see, but good players will see you, so try to approach them from the side. Anyways, let me show this one more time. You start by slowing hex, lift, full auto, shoot the head, and then after they drop to the floor, you throw the card, or you continue throwing cards. So
stay where you are.
Yeah, and at that point, anyone in the game is dead, unless they have like, yeah, a hard counter to you. The reason I'm explaining this is a lot of people like lift,
I got him.
shoot, and then throw cards over and over. And the funny thing is, again, in a 1v1 scenario, it's gonna do less damage right now. Even though Shadow Wave, if you look at the item, wait, it gives me 55% spirit ambush power, right? It sounds really nice. But in reality, cards got nerfed so hard that the bonus spirit you get from it actually does not make up for the damage you get from the fire rate, right? Again, obviously, if the enemy has a lot of bullet resist, right? If they have like, if they end up having improved bullet armor or something, then obviously you want to throw cards. So it's a situation, like it's a person-to-person situation kind of thing. But yeah, that's the combo thing. But the one issue this build has, or not issue, but the one weakness is, after you expand your ammo on the one person, you'll have to reload. And at this point, you're kind of weak, right? Let me enable my cooldown so you know what I mean, right? If you initiate the fight, you catch someone off guard, you lift them, and you get your combo off. Yeah, at this point, you're actually kind of weak. You have no full auto, you have no lift, you have no slowing X. All you have is, you know, a disengagement tool. Maybe you probably threw a lot of cards. So maybe you have like a card left and you have your normal attack fire, right? And your burst fire is also inactive, right? Because the burst fire, it procs every 8.5 seconds for 4 seconds. So after you kill your, you know, target of desire, your burst fire is gonna go on cooldown. So you'll feel very weak. And also you're not very tanky at this point. But we don't have a Titanic magazine that gives us spirit resist and melee resist, right? We don't have escalating resilience that gives us 40% bullet armor. We don't have spirit armor yet, right? Unless you bought it early, right? We don't have siphon bullets. We don't have a lot of tanky stuff. We're not really tanky. And we also don't have a big magazine, right? We have to reload a lot. This magazine is actually quite, I don't want to say small, right, for Wraith. It's still quite big. You still have basic magazine. At this point we sold ammo scav. So it still lasts for quite a bit. But like in like longer sustained fights, it's not nearly as good as my other build, right? After Shadow Weave, I like going for improved cooldown. I've also tried experimenting with extended duration. It makes the lift last a tiny bit longer. It makes your full auto last a tiny bit longer. In my opinion, not as worth as improved cooldown. The reason I like this is it reduces the cooldown of both my abilities and my items, okay? So it makes the entire the entire gameplay loop of me going in this, looking for a kill, right? Quite a bit faster, right? So what this does in practice, it reduces my cooldowns from 70 seconds on the lift to 60, and that's quite a big deal, right? Like every minute instead of every minute and 10 seconds, you want to go for kills over and over, right? And the limiting factor is your ult and Shadow Weave. Yeah, Shadow Weave is always going to go off cooldown earlier than ult, right? Like, so the limiting factor is going to be the ult, but I think this item is worth it, especially for the price, 1,250. I actually had a game where I sold extra charge when like the first time ever, because again, like this entire build is like mostly still gun damage. So I actually sold extra charge. At this point, I think it's worth it. I really like it. You can skip this if you don't like it, okay? And the next item I go is Fortitude. And Fortitude seems like really random here, right? Like, why would I suddenly go tanky, right? So now is the time where you wanna make it. So at this point, if you're not mega far behind, the first person you decide to kill with Shadow Weave should always die, unless something like drastic happens, right? Unless like you misplay, or unless they are a certain hero like Pocket, right? Which we'll get into situational items in a bit, right? But yeah, at this point you should be able to kill your first target in a team fight, but then you become kind of weak after. So now is where we focus around becoming more sustainable in fights. It makes us having to go to base less, right? Because we're always gonna passively regen when we don't take damage. So we can farm the jungle, go down to half HP, or like kind of engage somewhere, then leave for a bit, go invis, and then rejoin the fight, right? The passive healing is actually coming quite... the passive healing comes into play quite a lot in this build, in my opinion. But it also synergizes really well in general with Shadow Weave, because it also gives us movement speed, which is one thing we're lacking in this build as well, right? We got rid of Fleet Foot, we're not running Kinetic Dash, so as long as we're above 75% health, we get movement speed, and we have extra weapon damage, right? This gives us 27% weapon damage. And remember, we're always going to be full HP when we engage. And with Shadow Weave, we are the person that engage, right? We are not the ones being caught out. At least we shouldn't be, right? You are the one engaging, so you will still have Hollow Point Ward active, which brings me back to the very start of this video. That's why we run Hollow Point Ward. It's just another 22% damage for free, no matter what, because you're gonna start with full damage. And Fortitude is the same idea, where when we're below 75% HP, the fight is probably over, right? Like, that person should be dead that we lifted, right? So we can also move around in the jungle faster. So at this point, we also have more movement speed, right? Which is quite nice. And at this point, we're actually pretty fast on the map. And then we go into Titanic Magazine. You can run other things here now. That's why I have the situational tab. You can run escalating resilience if you feel like you need the bullet resist. You can run Silence Glyph, which is a thing I run a lot now. Silence Glyph great against heroes like Pocket, right? Because Pocket can actually still dodge our combo, right? Slowing Hex does not do enough against Pocket. He can always jump into his satchel to where you can't just use ult on him, right? So, or people buy debuff remover, right? Remove the slow, right? Or there are abilities that certain heroes have. I am having a kind of a brain fart right now, but there are a lot of heroes where the Silence Glyph comes into play extra. Yamato, biggest example right now, probably the best hero in the game, right? Insane Yamato patch. Yamato, you slowing Hex and lift out of Shadow Weave, they can still pop ult, and you do nothing, right? But if you come out of Invis, right, and you press both, what are they gonna do? You silence, slowed, and you lift it, right? And then the Yamato dies before they can ult, right? So if you want to be mega scumbag, Silence Glyph, definitely really good choice here. But yeah, usually I go for Titanic Magazine. I need some new tricks too. Usually I go to Titanic Magazine. Again, as I explained, our ammo is actually somewhat low, at least for usual Wraith builds, because we shoot so fast and we don't really have a lot of like items that give us ammo. So I like Titanic Magazine because it also makes us tankier. It gives us spirit resist, and then I usually go for spirit armor because the meta is still 95, 100% spirit damage, right? Gun builds are very rare, other than Haze and Wraith probably. Vindicta, maybe. And then late game. I always say this in late game, you don't have to go from left to right, okay? So late game, I kind of pick what I feel like is needed the most. And I made a few mistakes here, actually. Okay. I made a few mistakes. But this should be up here. And I forgot the refresher. Okay. So, late game. Usually, I like to go for Siphon Bullets now. They got rebuffed recently. They now give weapon damage. So, at this point, again, we do enough damage. We kill the person we lifted. And then if we actually want to start sustaining longer in fights, Siphon Bullets helps us a lot sustaining, right? Because it gives us the massive 20% base health. And then it gives us the 55% HP steal every second. And obviously, bullet resist, weapon damage, right? Improved spirit, armor, self-explanatory. Or if you are still not doing enough damage, crippling headshot. At this point, anything that comes into your lift drops instantly, right? Like at this point, your damage is insane, okay? Divine as Kevlar if you die too much. Like, let's say there's a lot of team fights. You go in with Shadow Weave, you lift 2 or 3, you kill one, and then you die. Divine as Kevlar, you pop, right? Not you pop. Like, you buy, you lift, and you live way longer, right? It's an insane spirit shield. And at that point, if you have Divine as Kevlar and Shadow Weave, cards should do enough damage because it's like another 90% spirit power. Unstop if you get stunned out of it, and obviously Curse, you know. If you buy Silence Glyph against a Pocket and then he also has Ethereal Shift, Curse is the massive fuck you to one person, right? So if you want to go mega scummy, you buy Curse, and then this is the ultimate rat where you slow Curse, bang, and then lift, and then like, you know, that I mean, nobody lives. Nobody can live, right? Like if you initiate out of Invis with Curse, and then immediately lift, they can't do anything. It's over. It's over, right? So this is the ultimate, you want to kill one person thing that you can buy. So yeah, not really in order for late game. And then, yeah, a few picks in situational. The reason I put this in situational and not late game, I tend to buy them less than the late game items, but I swap these around if I feel like there's a lot of gun damage on the enemy team. Again, escalating resilience, probably best item for that, probably better than bullet armor. Silence Glyph, I'll put this first in situational because it's really, really good in this build. Toxic bullets, arguably even better than before, in case the enemy has a lot of healing. But again, this shouldn't matter for us because we're gonna kill them before they can start healing, right? We're killing them so fast, we don't have to worry about the healing, right? So, not an item I buy a lot in this build. Enduring Spirit also really doesn't matter because the enemy should be dead before they slow you down, right? Magic Carpet for the memes. An Inhibitor, if you end up like in long extended team fights and it becomes super late game, this is still a great item to reduce their damage, right? And to slow them down, right? Lucky Shot is really bad now, so Inhibitor is probably the best item to make you tankier, make you deal more damage while slowing them down and making them deal less damage. Yeah, the only other option is Lucky Shot, or I guess you could run Mystic Slow, which I guess I put in here as well, because I think Mystic Slow, there's still a place in it. So in case you don't know, or didn't know, in the last build I was talking about this, Mystic Slow is actually quite solid with this, because it procs on Tesla bullets, right? So if you need the movement slow and the fire rate slow on the enemies, this is a really good item, because Tesla bullets, you know, procs not only on the person you shoot, but also the person around them. So you can actually get a mass AoE slow and fire rate slow without having to buy, like, let's say Ricochet and Inhibitor, right? So yeah, a really solid item. Could put this in more. And Refresher, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, I probably bought this once in this build. If you want a second ult, you know, if you want to be cool and want a second ult. I don't think it's nearly as valuable as most of the late game picks here that you have. There's just too many good options, right? Siphon Bullet is great, Crippling Headshot is great. That was a lot of yapping. I wanted to make like a 10-minute video about this build, but I made a 40-minute video, apparently. Or however long this is gonna end up after my editor cuts out all the shit, all the yapping. Yeah, that's about it. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat. And again, I'm sorry I turned into a scumbag. I would love, and I'm still gonna try, to find like a build that like a super tanky, like longer fight aim style, where you track the enemy and it's like a long team fight, like kind of like you know, like an AD carry kind of playstyle. But that's just not a thing right now with Wraith, because they made every playstyle that is not the rat playstyle kind of weak, in my opinion. So yeah, let me know what you think. And I hope that was helpful for you guys. Enjoy the build. Let me know how the build goes if you use it. And until next time, see you friends. Bye bye.